if anyone goes vegan, first thing is, well, they're trying their best, aren't they? They're thinking about their health. But I bet your bottom dollar they might start running. They might start, like you say, stop smoking. So just want to get into the super chats. Now, we're not doing, this is not a fundraiser. It's not a money raising thing. People have been very kind to donate. I think there's quite a few on your channel, Anthony, have. And I think it'd just be nice to just whistle through some of those questions because they've been very kind to do that. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Uncle Jonga, so we're going to have some great names coming up. Dr. Chaffee, how do you manage to stay at your current weight when you've said you often eat OMAD? So I'm assuming they think, how do you keep your muscle? Because it's only OMAD. And would you share details of your workouts, please?
Yeah, so I've answered some of these in the chats just to make sure that people were sort of getting them. But yeah, so for that, I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing OMAD, So I mean that's how much I need to eat. Remember, if you're eating high density nutrition, you don't need to eat as much or as often. And so I find that if I'm just having a normal day, sedentary day where I'm just working on the computer or at the hospital or seeing patients, I don't need to eat all that much. So I still eat a lot. I still eat like 2 pounds of ribeye, which is scares some people, and other people who are in this space going like, oh my God, is that all you eat? And so it's different for everyone. But when I'm working out, when I'm able to work out, when I have time to, that will double. That will easily double. I'll be doing 4 pounds of fatty ribeye a day. If it's more lean, it's going to be more than that. So that goes up. But that's the wonderful thing about carnivore is that you never get out of shape. This is me out of shape. This is where I'm out of shape. Because I work out maybe once a month at this point, and I just haven't had time. And now I need to make time, and I need to get back into the routine. Right now, I'm not in the routine. I work out like once a month, and so this is what it looks like for me when I really don't work out. Right, so I never get out of shape. I can get in a lot better shape, and when I work out consistently, I get much more muscular, much more lean, and I feel much better too. So I like that. I like working out, but I never get worse than this. It never gets worse than this, right? Which is kind of nice, but then that's just eating intuitively, just eating as much as or as little as your body is telling you to eat. When I am working out, I like to be consistent. I like to work out like at least 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. That was my old schedule when I was playing rugby. So I'd have my rugby games and practices on top of that. That was just my lifting schedule. So I've sort of continued on with that. And then, obviously that's not always enough for me. So when I have time, I try to add in extra workouts, an extra leg day, an extra sprint day, or like, sprint hills or stairs or something like that, on the other days as well. And if I'm doing that, I feel absolutely amazing, and I get very muscular and even more lean. I usually hover around 10% body fat. If I'm not working out, I'll easily drop down to 6% body fat without trying, just eating 4 pounds of beef a day, and just working out. I'm sure I could lean down more than that if I wanted to, but I don't particularly care to. I'm not like in a competition or anything like that. As long as I've got veins popping out of my abs, like I think that's more than fine. And so that's what I do. So that's my workout routine is work out when I can, and when I do, I hit it hard. I mean, I've been working out since I was a kid, and I've been working out at a high level since I was 14 years old, and so I do push myself very, very hard when I do work out. So I get a lot out of it. And because I'm on carnivore, I get a lot out of that. And so, I really enjoy that side of things. And so I get a lot of, I do like that. But if you're able to work out, then just go 4 days a week. Start with that. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, set up your workouts for each of those days and push it hard, work to exhaustion. You're trying to wear yourself out and let your body, rebuild and regrow. You're on a carnivore diet. You're going to be able to rebuild and you're going to be able to push yourself a lot harder. You're not going to be able to wear yourself out as nearly as easily, and you're going to recover a lot faster. You're going to get a lot more out of it. And then you just need to eat enough. You have to eat. If that's once a day, that's fine. If it's twice a day, it's fine. If it's 6 times a day, it doesn't matter. Just make sure you're getting enough for you and whatever you're doing. And that's going to be different for different people. Most people won't need to eat more than twice a day if they're eating maximally, if they're eating to the point of satiety, and even if they're working out a lot. So that's what I would suggest people do.
Excellent. Next question. We'll rattle through these. T. Alexander, is there a perfect? I actually think we've covered this, but let's do a quick one.
Right.
Is there a perfect fat to protein ratio you should consume daily?
Yeah. Really, just for the individual, aim for that 1-to-1 gram for gram, and then adjust from there. Depending on if you're working out a lot, or you're leaning down, or you have a lot of excess body fat, or you're very slender and you need to put on weight. You might need a different amount of fat and protein. Most people need around a gram of fat and a gram of protein, equal equivalent parts. But, some people need a bit more fat. Some people need a bit more protein. You need enough fat. You need enough protein. Listen to your body, listen to your taste signals, and just give your body what it needs.
That's brilliant. Nick Ale, will I gain the same amount of muscles doing intermittent fasting 16.8, 2 meals a day, or not fasting and eating breakfast, but I gain the same nutrition during the day? There's two ways of eating. That's the question, basically.
Yeah, I think, look, if I think you're eating maximally and you're eating to satiety, and you're eating to the point that meat stops tasting good, you probably won't need to eat multiple times a day. I don't think you need to stick in an eating window. I think that only applies when you're eating carbohydrates and your insulin's going up. And so, you get the value of doing that in intermittent fasting or long-term fasting or whatever, just by being on a ketogenic diet, which carnivore diet is. And so, but there might be some idiosyncrasies with that, eating like a big bolus of, was it leucine, and then, getting your mTOR kick and things like that for muscle hypertrophy. So, if you're sort of spacing out smaller meals throughout the day, maybe you're not getting that big mTOR hit the way Richard was talking about. So, what would you think on that one, Richard?
Right, I muted myself there. Yeah, completely agree. Again, I completely agree. It comes back to the point we made earlier, isn't it, about the myth of the anabolic window and consuming these nutrients. But leucine is the key. And leucine is found in abundance in red meats in particular. We need around 3 grams to activate mTOR. So typically, any meal that we consume being carnivore is going to activate mTOR and allow us to build muscle. I think we can weight it one way or another through the mTOR reset every 4 hours. But it is incredibly difficult to hit this on a daily basis, even with the best will in the world. It's incredibly difficult to activate mTOR 4 times due to work and lifestyle. But the key is in the mTOR reset. No carbs required, fats and protein. I tend to recommend around 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight for a male, and around 0.9 for a female. But I go considerably over this. I don't think there's any further advantage to building muscle. Once mTOR is activated, you're at the upper threshold. But I love eating meat. I love my food. So I eat until I'm satisfied. And coming back to the point that Dr. Chaffee made about the volume of food, I can eat stupid amounts of food some days, and I can go days with eating very little. Same situation to Dr. Chaffee. I came away from competing professionally last May. So just over a year ago. I'm down 3 stone in weight, but I'm only down 2 kilograms in lean body mass, so in muscle mass, which is incredibly interesting because I haven't actually lost an awful lot of muscle. I'm training weights less than once a week, but I've still got the shape. I'm still ripped with abs and veins running down my arms. I was recently called Action Man over He-Man. So apparently I used to look like He-Man and now I look like Action Man. But I'll take Action Man. But it just goes to show that, training once a month or once every few weeks, when you've built this lean mass and you were consuming highly nutrient-dense food, your body will maintain the shape. If I was working away recently with Phil Taylor, the ex-Dart player, 16 times world champion. We went there to support him in a comeback. And I went to the gym in the day. First time I've trained in 3 weeks in the gym. I wore a vest and I was a little bit shady walking into the gym initially because I felt sort of I felt almost like a little boy because I'd lost all this weight because I'm used to bodybuilding instead of running and cycling. Within 5 minutes lifting weights, everything lumped and bumped, everything came back. And I was quite pleased with the way that it looked in the mirror. And I'm hardly doing any training. And again, I'm sitting similar to Dr. Chaffee, between 8 and 10% body fat from doing very, very little. So this is heavily weighted towards nutrition. You can't out-train a bad diet. Nutrition is key. And I truly believe that carnivore, at least heavily weighted towards animal-based lifestyle is the key to this. You can train all you want, but nutrition is the number one key to this. So yeah, on to the next question.
Yeah, and I'm just going to put the disclaimer up because we should. This is not medical advice. We're not giving one-to-one advice. This is purely for education and informational purposes. So if you've got a very, very specific question, we can't really do the patient doctor sort of relationship. It's just giving you some information. You can do your own research. So LS very kindly donated. Father is 72, diabetic, on dialysis, almost passed away 3 weeks ago. Sorry to hear that. He's back home now, can barely walk. Is eggs, beef the best diet for him? What is most optimal for him to do? I see him tomorrow.
I think that's 100% the best thing for him and for anyone to do, regardless of our medical conditions and preconditions, we're all still human. So, the best thing for us to eat is a proper human diet, our biologically appropriate species specific diet, what we are biologically and biochemically designed to eat and benefit the most from, and eliminating out all those things that harm us. That's very, very important, right? And that's the why you don't eat plants, right? Because they cause harm. There are some benefits. There are some nutrients that you can get out of them. Not as much, because a lot of them are not bioavailable, or as bioavailable. And there are no nutrients that are in plants that you have to have that you cannot get from meat. But the reverse is the case. There are nutrients you have to have that you can only get from meat, you cannot get from plants. So, being a diabetic, 100%, this is clinically proven to reverse diabetes, is going on a ketogenic diet, especially when you eliminate out seed oils and linoleic acid and things like that. And a carnivore diet is the perfect one to do for that, because you're getting all the animal fats and proteins and all that sort of stuff. You're getting the perfect nutrition, and you're eliminating out all the carbs and seed oils and things like that. So that will reverse diabetes, type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes. It will perfectly control, because you'll get perfectly controlled blood sugar, and you'll only have to take you'll take a much less insulin as a result of that, which is very beneficial for a lot of reasons. And then on dialysis is tough. Your kidneys are not really functioning anymore. They may not ever function again. And normally heretofore we thought that they would never function again, that's sort of it. But I've seen, anecdotally, that I've seen now 3 people come off of dialysis on a carnivore diet. It took from 9 months to a year, but they actually started making urine again, which is insane. But what you're doing is you're eliminating out a lot of things that are nephrotoxic. So they're toxic to the kidneys, right? Like oxalates, but many other things are nephrotoxic as well. And you're providing actual proper nutrition for your body. And people think, oh my goodness, protein gets broken down into ammonia, and that it turns into urea, and that's a problem for clearance out of our kidneys. So that's going to be harder on your kidneys. In fact, that's not the case. In the actual studies that have looked at this, they actually find that no, actually more protein equals better kidney function. Now, you don't have any kidney function, it may be a bit of a moot point, but it's certainly not going to make it worse. And if you don't have kidney function at all anyway, it's definitely not going to make it worse, because how can you get worse than zero, right? So it's going to help in many other ways. It will definitely help with the diabetes. I can't say it's going to fix the dialysis, because there's such a thing as damage done, and people can you can permanently damage your organs, unfortunately. But it's certainly not going to hurt him. It's certainly not going to hurt them. And you never know. I never cease to be amazed. Like I've seen when I say this before, but like when you start seeing, people with Huntington's disease start to improve on a carnivore diet, then you're like, okay, what the hell is going on? This is just nuts. That's supposed to be like 100% penetrance. If you have that gene, you will get that disease, period. There's nothing you can do. You're never going to stop it. It doesn't matter. It's coming. And that's horrible. That's a really scary thing to deal with. And, it's just a matter of time. And when's it going? Well, you have a little shake. Oh shit, is it starting? Oh my God. Is the clock ticking already? Like that's terrifying. Now people are getting better on that. That is nuts. And then, again, 3 people coming off dialysis, that could have been a complete fluke. You never know, but it's going to be better in a lot of other ways as well. Certainly not going to hurt. And it will, I think it will help, in a lot of ways. So yeah, definitely beef and eggs. I think he also asked in there, about water. When you're not making urine, it doesn't matter if you're on carnivore or not. You have to limit the amount of water that you drink, because it's only coming off with dialysis and sweat, things like that. So that just whatever direction his doctor is saying on how much water to drink, it should just stick with that.
Rich, did you want to add anything?
Let me unmute that. No, I mean, spot on. The only thing that I think Dr. Chaffee's answered everything in regards to that, but I mean, coming back to, watching and seeing Huntington's disease being reversed and things, dementia, which we're told is, hereditary and genetic, it's dementia is 99.9% preventable. Just going off on one really quickly, I know we're under pressure with this, but Alzheimer's is affected by the glutaminergic neurotransmitters, and these need rapid energy from glucose, and some of the nerve cells can only use glucose for energy. Because they don't have mitochondria, and only mitochondria can use ketones for energy. Now, glucose passes into the brain through the GLUT1 transporter, and most of the cells use GLUT3 transporters, both of which are insulin independent, meaning they do not need insulin. But the hippocampus also uses GLUT4 transporter, which is insulin dependent, which means the hippocampus requires insulin. Now, the issue with this is in a situation of insulin resistance, we flood the brain, the blood-brain barrier with insulin, and over time it causes receptors to downregulate, meaning the brain can literally be swimming in a sea of glucose, unable to utilize it for energy. And this is why dietary intervention is so important. Too much carbohydrates leads to this insulin resistance. These oxidative foods high in linoleic acid cause all of these issues. And this is why it is diet related. All of these illnesses and diseases that we look at and we believe are hereditary and cancers, because it runs in my family. We eat what our parents eat. We are prodigies of our parents and we. So it's not the case of it's the genetics, it's the foods that we are eating. And yeah, Huntington's been reversed, Alzheimer's preventable and maintainable, manageable. The things that I've seen the diet achieve and reverse is absolutely incredible. But apologies, going off on one again there, but
that's okay. And the final one on the super chat, which is carnivore health. What would you suggest for Bloastocystis hominis, which is, just for people that don't know what that is, that's a single cell parasitic thing that grows in your digestive tract, unless Anthony wants to put me right. Carnivore for over 4 years, IBSD over 20 years. What would you suggest?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not something that I treat, so I wouldn't have a great answer for that. But as far as nutrition is concerned, keep doing what you're doing with carnivore. You could add in some, sort of fermented sort of dairy products. The live culture yogurt, without any sugar or anything like that. People like kefir, however you want to pronounce it. But I've looked at a lot of the products, and they have tons of sugars in them, so I don't know if they add those back in or what, but they're not supposed to. It's supposed to be fully fermented out of there. But so don't get those. And I would just eat that way. And then you need to sort of talk to your doctor and see if you need to be on any sort of pharmacological treatments as well. I don't think that medicines are always out of bounds. It's just in specific things. I think the vast majority of illnesses we can treat with diet and diet alone, and in fact those are the only treatments for it. because it's the diet that's causing them, so you have to address the diet to address the root cause. But there are other things, like you have, Bloastocystis hominis, where you have some little bug that's running around, and if your body's having trouble clearing it, that's a time when medications can be very helpful.
I suppose you could look at sort of nature's antibiotics, like maybe ginger or garlic. Apparently, I'm not great with herbs, but I'll just put that into the mix. But yeah, Rich.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's, we're carnivore. We preach this way of living where we do not consume any vegetables, but medicines come from plants. And I believe that, that's what they're there for. They're there to treat certain things. I would be dead now if I hadn't consumed or taken medication at various points in my life. So there's a place for it, but medication, is a tool. We should not be, we don't consume medication unless we're sick. If we're sick, okay, take some medication, but look at the root cause. Let's look at what's causing this problem. And what's my Steve going off on it, but I'm not a lover of plants, but I think as Dr. Chaffee says, there's definitely a case for medication as and when, but take it as and when you need it, but it's not preventative. You don't take medication unless you have a problem, and if you live this lifestyle, it's very likely that you won't have the problem in the first place. I can't remember the last time that I've taken medication, of any kind. I genuinely can't. It's years and years since I've taken medication, because I'm not becoming sick. I don't feel sick. I don't get tired anymore. It comparatively to carbohydrates, I don't come down with illnesses. It's been a long time since I've had to take any medication for the doctor. And to circle back to a point that Dr. Chaffee made earlier, I went to my doctor after reversing my type 2 diabetes, which he couldn't do with medication, and said, fantastic, you've reversed your diabetes, but now I recommend you come off this diet as it's going to make you sick. And it's like, wait a minute, I just reversed my diabetes when you couldn't with medication, and now you're telling me to eat the way that I was eating that made me sick in the first place. I have not been back to my doctor since, and that was 10, 11 years ago. And it just baffles me how people who are clearly intelligent can't take a step back, look at the bigger picture, and realize that the way that we are living is healing and repairing the body and reversing things in ways that they can't do with medication. So look, I'm not against medication. I just think that, you take medication if you're sick. If you live this lifestyle, you'll find that you're not sick very often.
Well, I think in the most basic way of looking at it, bacteria will thrive on what you feed it. So if you take out what it likes, it's going to die off anyway, which is why we get some improvements, isn't it? Once you get the carbohydrates out, a lot of the bacteria are not getting the food they need. So I think carnivore does resolve most issues that I come across where it's gut issues. I think the improvement is huge, but things like parasites are a little bit different, aren't they? Right, Warwick, what do I do if I'm not producing stomach acid? He's used HCl and digestive enzymes. They don't seem to work.
Yeah, well, so I mean, is this an actual fact that you don't produce stomach acid? Because I think you'd be the only one. You may have symptoms that you feel that you're not having as good digestion, or maybe you're feeling that you're getting bloated or weird sort of symptoms. And that's one thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not creating any stomach acid. It'd be very difficult for you to be alive right now if you weren't making any stomach acid, because you need it, right? You do need this stuff to start the initial process of breaking down your food, any food. And so the B10 HCl, I've never used that, but from my understanding, that's like an herbal supplement sort of thing. And I don't know if that is actually very acidic. I don't really know. I understand that some people take that to sort of help them digest and things, but I don't know. digestive enzymes don't seem to work. So, I mean, the main problem is not, so you sort of diagnose yourself. You say, I don't produce stomach acid. So how do I fix that? But what are your symptoms? What are you feeling? What is the problem? Because it could be something else. It could be that there's something else that's going on that's causing the symptoms that you're experiencing. Has nothing to do with stomach acid. If you do want to maximize your stomach acid and the acidity of your stomach, then you need to avoid drinking water, but around meals. So you have to, like, for 2 hours before a meal, you don't drink any water. You don't put anything in your body. You don't put anything down your mouth, and then you'll eat, and then that will concentrate this up. So if you have half a cup of stomach acid sort of sitting around, and you drink 8 cups of water during the day, or 4 cups of water during the day, you're going to dilute that down to a 1/12 of what it was before, and so you're going to have a much more dilute stomach acid, right? So that's not what you want. You want that stuff to be very potent and very acidic, and so you don't want to dilute it. And so just don't drink water for a couple hours before you eat a meal. See how you go. See what that does for you. Don't drink water during the meal. Don't drink water for another hour or 2 after your meal. See what that does for you. But again, I don't know what symptoms you're experiencing, and so I don't really know how much better to help you, because you're taking all these digestive enzymes, so obviously you have some sort of digestive issue. If you don't have stomach acid, I don't think you'd be here. So, it's like you have to be making stomach acid, you really, and maybe you're not, but if you're not, then you're not. And you just have to sort of deal with that as best you can. You still need to eat meat. Meat is what we're designed to eat, and it's going to be the most bioavailable. It's going to be easiest to break down. So, if you're eating plants, you definitely need your stomach acid. You need to start, really, 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 put the chemical thumb screws to this stuff to try to extract any nutrients out of that crap. And so, you want to, eat what's very bioavailable, which is meat. So, eat meat, drink water, but don't drink water 2 hours before or after your meals, and see how you go.
Can I just add a little bit there as well? And don't forget your mechanical digestion. Maybe chew your food more, just actually enjoy it a little bit more. Look at it before you start eating it, just to get everything flowing a bit. Just take your time. But I think mechanical digestion is really, really underrated. I know I sound like your parents now, but if you chew your food properly, it's going to help a little bit. Definitely going to help. Rich, sorry.
No, fantastic. Yeah, nothing to add with any of that. That's fantastic. One of the comments that have popped up on the side, though, by Low Carb, Low Drama, Dr. Chaffee, any link to the debate you have done with the guy who convinced McCullough long-term ketosis was unhealthy? Dr. Chaffee, I recorded a little piece with this, didn't we, which we haven't released, and I think we're going to redo, won't we? But you did record one with Georgie. Is it Georgie?
Yeah, Georgie Dinkoff.
Yeah, Georgie Dinkoff. That's it. Yeah. So I guess they're looking for a link to that, but I think you and I are still on for recording our thing to this, which we did prior to this one, isn't it? But so they've just asked that question there, which I thought I'd just read out now, as it was something that we put a lot of effort into, wasn't it?
We did, yeah. And so I thought that was great. We did we addressed sort of all the different points that were made in that discussion with Mercola, and there's certainly evidence to the contrary. One of the main points of evidence to the contrary is that, I've been doing this for 6 years and I don't have high cortisol, and I don't have abdominal fat and central adiposity and visceral fat. And so, and we see this a lot. And in fact, there are actual studies, with patients that are put on a ketogenic diet. And one study, after 8 weeks, their cortisol levels actually significantly went down. And so there's a mix. Some go up, some go down. There was one that followed people for 2 years. It was a very long-term study for ketosis, or people on keto. Is this safe long-term? And this followed people for 2 years. And so the argument was like, well, if you're on keto, eventually your cortisol will go up high enough that you'll stall your weight loss. You won't lose any weight. But in this study for people for 2 years follow-up, they found that actually they lost a lot of weight, and it was statistically significant. So they statistically significant. They lost a statistically significant amount of weight that was significant. So they lost a significant amount of weight that was statistically significant. Jesus, that was harder to say than it should have been. So and their cortisol levels actually hadn't changed. And in fact, they found that all the symptoms of hypercortisolism were ameliorated, right? And that's actually something that shows up, in study after study after study, is that when you are, regardless of what your cortisol level is, the symptoms and signs of hypercortisolism, so having higher than physiologically acceptable levels of cortisol, they go away. They get better, right? And even to the extent that people actually really do have like Cushing's disease or Cushingoid syndrome or Cushing's disease, that they are going to need surgery or medical intervention, they're put on a ketogenic diet beforehand, because this actually helps ameliorate the effects of hypercortisolism being in ketosis, right? And so they're put on a ketogenic diet before and after surgical or medical intervention to treat the primary cause. So that's very telling, is that, that people actually get better. They don't have the hypercortisol problems on ketosis. In fact, those problems get better. And people wondering about, well, are you going to gain weight? Well, no, there's that study for 2 years. No, they didn't gain weight. They lost a lot of weight. There's a study looking at kids with epilepsy. They're put on a ketogenic diet because their doctors had some damn sense. And they were very slim kids. They're like, oh, hey, maybe they're too skinny. Maybe this isn't healthy. And so they came off a ketogenic diet, and they found that as soon as they came off, their weight slammed up. Right. And so they actually gain a significant amount of weight after that. And so it's, there's differences in the literature. And so it just depends on the studies that you're looking at. But if you're looking at, a broad range of these, you'll definitely find examples of very big, high level, very high quality studies that actually show, hey, actually, this doesn't increase cortisol, or if it does, it's marginal, and in fact, but it's not giving the symptoms of high cortisol. Some people think that, in fact, that rise in cortisol that you see in some of these studies is actually good. That they were actually below where they should have been physiologically, and now this is actually correcting back up to where it should be. And people with metabolic syndrome, which is a lot of people, you have depressed cortisol levels. So, this is something that people who listen to me know that I've spoken about, that the reference ranges in studies or in labs and things like that are just garbage, because it's just the average for the community. So the first 2,000 people that come in to get lab tests that year, that's the reference ranges, right? Because it's the average for your community. Well, you're in that range, you're in that good range of what people are at. Well, people are sick. 92% of Americans have at least one metabolic issue. 70% of Americans are overweight or obese. The rest of the world is right there with us. All right. So some of them are worse. As far as obesity is concerned, America's only number 19, which is way higher than it should be. But it's like there's 18 other countries with higher obesity rates than America. So people talking about, just mad trash about how, fat and obese Americans, there's 18 other ones that are worse. Right. And a lot worse, actually. I think we're at like 42%. I think some of the Pacific Islands are like 60% obesity, not even overweight and obese, but obesity. So, you don't want to measure yourself up against the average person. So, you can have these differences in reference ranges. And so you're looking at your cortisol and you're going like, oh, wow, their cortisol level goes up a bit. And, oh, that's not good. It's above the reference range, or maybe it's on the high end of that reference range. It's like, okay, well, maybe everyone else is too low, and maybe that's what that reference range is looking at. They're looking at a bunch of sick people with metabolic syndrome, and metabolic syndrome is known to depress cortisol below sub-physiological levels. So there's a lot of sort of reasons why that could be. But at the end of the day, there is no such thing as essential carbohydrate, and a number of different bodies. There was the International Institute of Medicine or something. I'm butchering the name, but they've said that there's absolutely no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. The amount of carbohydrates you need throughout your entire life to be healthy is apparently zero. Because there are a number of different civilizations alive right now that don't eat any carbohydrates, or maybe just like once a year when fruits in season for a couple of weeks, and the rest of the year don't eat any, or others that don't eat any carbohydrates at all throughout their entire existence, generation after generation, and with seemingly no negative health outcomes and health ramifications because of this. So you don't need them. If you had a whole bunch of hormonal issues, thyroid depression, things like that, the Inuit would be dead. All of our ancestors during the ice ages would be dead. They would all have been, bred out, because you get cretinism. That's what congenital hypocortisolism is cretinism. Or sorry, congenital hypothyroidism is cretinism, and that is a very serious birth defect and congenital abnormality where people don't develop properly, have very short stature, small brains, changes, very specific changes to their facial features, and they're quite intellectually impaired and physically weaker and impaired as well. So I mean that doesn't go too far when you're out there in the tundra hunting mammoth and things like that. Like you're on your game or you're dead, and so that doesn't make any sense. So there's a lot for that, but I actually liked that debate. It was George is actually a really nice guy. We actually see eye to eye on a lot more than that. That Mercola interview, I think is I don't think that's. I think it's sort of harsher, I guess, than what it appeared that he actually, sort of espoused during our discussion. He was just like, actually, I'm fine with carnivore. I just think that you should do it in a very specific way to, maximize your health and results. And I was like, no, that's fair enough. And we agreed on a lot of things, and we differed on a few others, but it was very collegial. It was a very enjoyable discussion. That's going to be on Brian Grin's podcast, so GRYN, and I was on his podcast before, and I haven't gotten an email from him yet, but he was saying he's going to try to get it out in the next couple of weeks, but I don't think it's out yet. So long-winded answer, it's not out yet.
Yeah, see, Anthony, you've been hanging around with Richard too long.
I know. Yeah, and with a bad crowd. Or maybe he's been hanging out with me. Like, I've never been good at that. I've
got a great question, Rich, if it's okay, just one of the submitted ones, because I feel people have gone out of their way. Is that okay, Rich? Because I know you've got some there. But this might interest you as well as Dr. Chaffee. The question is, why would I have tested low in folate after more than 2 years carnivore and 8 months of beef fat only? Could low folate cause anxiety, which I currently suffer? And she's put a little bit of context in, because Anthony, you were asking for a bit more context.
Yeah.
She's currently stage 3 bone. She currently has stage 3 bone cancer, which has been stable for 2 years. I suspect some damage from the CT scan contrast dye, and I've switched to MRI scans. So it's basically, why is it low folate? I know a little bit more. That person was told actually she wouldn't be around to be asking this question a year ago. So why would she have tested low folate with 8 months beef and beef fat only?
Yeah. Well, look, everyone has a bit of, different demands, that their body goes through, and you have a different sort of metabolism as well. People have the MTHFR genes. I always look at that and I always think it's the mother effer gene. And that's what it is. And, but that impairs your ability to process folate. So you can be getting in dietary folate, and it's not really going to be doing as much for you. It just sort of impairs that, and that's okay. Actually, when you're eating regeneratively raised, beef or wild animals and things like that, you're going to have a much higher level of folate. So, for example, I saw a regenerative farmer rancher who's giving a talk, I think at Hillsdale, and he was saying that normal chicken eggs in America, that's like the USDA puts out, that they're marked as having 41 milligrams of folate per egg, right? But his eggs have over 1,000 milligrams per egg, right? So you're talking, 25, 30 times the amount of folate in a chicken that's just fed what the hell it's supposed to eat, which is not hard to do, and so it's much more nutritionally dense. And so from a bang for your buck sort of point of view, it's like, well, it's more expensive to do that. It's like, yeah, but you don't need to eat as much because it's much more nutritionally packed. Same with beef. I've spoken to different ranchers. They do regeneratively raised beef, grass fed and finished, rotating their cows around different pastures, and they're reporting and publishing their nutritional values are like 4 or 5 times in like every micronutrient, vitamin, and mineral that you care to look at. Even getting like 120, 150 milligrams of vitamin C, which is like people say, oh, there's not enough vitamin C. Like, well, and that there's more than you need. There's all more than you need anyway, because you just need far less when you're not eating a bunch of plants. But so we're not eating what is perfect for us anymore, right? So we're not eating, just wild caught mammoth, which is what we sort of, grew up eating, and just wild animals in general. So the wild animals are going to be more healthy. The regeneratively raised animals are going to be more healthy. Some people, like with that gene variation, are going to need a bit more folate. And if you're not getting that from just the store-bought sort of meat and eggs that you're getting, you probably need to add in some liver. Liver's got a lot of folate. Most people don't need it. Most people do just fine with just skeletal meat and fat. But it is much more packed with nutrients. And so if you find yourself deficient for whatever reason, fine. Just eat some more organs. Eat some more liver or something like that. Don't go overboard and go too far on the other end, because then you'll get hypervitaminosis and you can get too much vitamins and minerals sort of building up, especially the fat soluble vitamins and copper and things like that from beef liver. And so you just add that back in. It may be that you have that gene variation and you just need a bit more folate, and just for the type of meat that you have access to, it's not enough. But it could potentially cause some anxiety. Stranger things have happened. Generally, that's not. I don't think that's. I don't know if that's a typical side effect of this, but there are other ones that are more typical of low folate levels. But either way, you feel like there's something a bit off. You have this number that's a bit off. You can correct it and see how that goes. Just add in a bit of liver, sort of have that, a bit of that, a couple ounces a day or a couple ounces, 3 times a week. Check it again in a month and see where you're at. And if you have to eat more liver, eat more liver. If you got to take a folate vitamin, take a folate vitamin. It's not a big deal.
Rich, did you want to get back to your questions that you got for Dr. Chaffee?
Apologies. I've got so many. I don't think 8 minutes. I don't think would be long enough. But I mean, just to add to that as well, that medications can prevent the absorption of folate. Overcooking your meats can do so as well. So I mean, this is why I tend to cook my steak rare. And source of nutrients, as Dr. Chaffee rightly says about the source of eggs. It's the same with the source of meats and things. So all of these things, I'm a big fan of organ meats, beef liver in particular, fantastic source. Folate, I did an interesting podcast recently with, oh my goodness, Patrick Holford, who is an expert in Alzheimer's. And these neurotransmitter signals in the brain, affect Alzheimer's as well as mood and depression and anxiety. And folate, as well as B12 and omega-3 is a big factor. So folate is definitely an issue. B12, B6, homocysteine is an amino acid. Vitamin B12, B6, and folate break down homocysteine to create other chemicals that the body needs, and high homocysteine levels may mean that you have a vitamin deficiency. So we need to treat that with extra vitamins and minerals, and as Dr. Chaffee says, one of the best sources is animal proteins, particularly Organ meats. I'm a big lover of beef liver. I haven't been able to consume it raw yet, but I don't know if you're a lover. And connective tissue as well. Connective tissue is a thing that a lot of people tend to miss. I eat the gristle on the bone and all the stringy bits on the steak and on the bone and things. And these are pieces that people cut off, which are highly nutrient dense and full of collagen and other vitamins and minerals. So yeah. But yeah, there's one thing that I wouldn't mind hitting you with before you go. So within the keto and carnivore community recently, I noticed there's been a shift over to cycling carbohydrate, especially with females around cycles, particularly to do with the production of progesterone. We're told that we need, a week before cycle to increase carbohydrates to increase progesterone. And the research that I've done has led me to believe that it's not so much the carbohydrates, it's the case that we just need to be consuming the nutrients. And this could be as simple as consuming more nutrients from a carnivore ketogenic lifestyle, not typically consuming from carbohydrate, and while avoiding fasting. But there are a few influencers who I highly respect within the community who have posted this a few times lately about cycling carbohydrates for a week before cycle and not fasting. The not fasting I agree with. The carbohydrates, I can't get my head around that because I just don't understand from an evolutionary perspective. Men and women were consuming the same foods. I don't understand why a female would be consuming more carbohydrate around certain times of the month. And I believe that it's to do with lack of nutrients from just in general, as in protein and fat, and not carbohydrates. So we do see an increase in progesterone when we increase carbohydrate, but we also see an increase when we increase meats and fat. So do you have an opinion on that? Is it a case of, do we need carbohydrate? I think I already know the answer, but it's it's nice to have a soundboard. But this is what I advise to the female clients that I work with: eat more a week leading up to your cycle, but you do not need to cycle carbohydrate. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I don't think you need to either. Like you said, people were eating the same things. Female lions eat the same thing as male lions, even during estrus or leading up to estrus, and same with every single other animal on Earth. Animals eat what animals eat. They eat the same thing. Once you're weaned, from your mother's milk as a mammal, you eat what the adults eat basically until you die. And that's pretty much it. And the other animals don't sort of eat slightly differently, variation wise, not really. They especially predators, they hunt, they take down the same animal, they eat the same animal, they all eat it together, and cows eat grass, and koalas eat eucalyptus. And there's our resident expert was pretty apropos for this question on fertility and whether women should cycle carbs the week before. I don't think they need to. I don't think that it makes any sense that they would. When were they going to have access to this? I mean, they can't just go down to C's Candy and get a box of chocolates, as they do now. And so especially in an ice age or something like that, you're like, you may want a box of chocolates, but guess what? There aren't any. And so you're eating mammoth. You're eating mammoth. That's what you're eating. That's what I want. Well, you're eating mammoth. All right. That's what we have. All right. And so, if that didn't work for our fertility, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah. It's almost written in the stars that Dr. Robert Kiltz will walk in when we're talking about fertility. So can I just sum up Dr. Anthony Chaffee's first 3 hours? That was fantastic, Anthony, and really appreciate the generosity of your time there.
You're welcome.
To help us with the kickoff and hand the baton to a fantastic Dr. Robert Kiltz here, which is great. Do you want to give us some final thoughts, Anthony, when you go off?
Oh gosh, no! I just thank you guys. It's been great. I've been looking forward to this for a while. It's sort of it's a very it's a big endeavor that you guys are taking on, and so I'm looking forward to it. And I think it'll be fun for people to see. You're on hour 22 and 23. You're not going to be drooling and you're going to be fine. You're going to be a bit more worse for wear, but you'll be fine. You'll still be talking about everything. You'll still be happy and kill it going. You'll still have a ton of energy. So I'm sure you'll sleep very well after that. But you won't need caffeine or anything else. And so this would be just to show people like, wow, look at that. Look what you can do when you're giving your body what it needs. So, hats off to you guys for doing that. I'm glad I could help.
No, appreciate that. Yeah, well appreciated. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Dr. Chaffee, where can people find you?
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on. So, my main YouTube channel is just Anthony Chaffee, MD, and that's where I have most of my podcasts and videos. Everything sort of goes up there. I have my podcast if people just want to listen to it, and that's just Anthony Chaffee, that's just the Plant Free MD, and then my Instagram is just again Anthony Chaffee MD, and you can find the rest of my socials all through that, but those are the main ones anyway.